the whole world shaking, and you feel your heart is breaking. Take my hand, no hesitating. Oh, when you're just so tired of trying, all alone you feel like hiding. Together we'll keep fighting. There's no stopping us. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Don't stop now. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna mountains too high we can climb it. Feel this, we're taking the moment. There's no stopping us. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Can you see the sun is shining like a new hope? Feel it rising, coming over the horizon. There's no stopping us. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Don't stop now. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna mountains too high we can climb it. Feel this, we're taking the moment. There's no stopping us. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Don't you give up, don't you give up on me. Don't you give up, don't you give up now. Don't you give up, don't you give up on me. Don't you give up, don't you give up now. Don't you give up, don't you give up on me. Don't you give up, don't you give up now. Don't you give up, don't you give up on me. Don't you give up, don't you give up now. There's no stopping.
Good evening. I'm so happy that it's going directly to my blog. Sometimes there's a delay there, and it takes a while to hit the blog. It's a learning process, okay? But it's September 25th. It was a beautiful, beautiful day. I was out showing homes and running a contract. Yesterday I had a home inspection, and we got that squared away today. Oh, let me make sure. Make sure that you can hear me, okay? Make sure my trusty microphone is nearby. All right, but it's September 25th. It was a beautiful day. Again, what I was saying before I realized the microphone wasn't near me. That showed houses today, wrote a contract. Yesterday I had a home inspection, and we got that cleared up today. And we'll talk about home inspections today as well, and about today's market and how to be most successful. The other thing I wanted to say, yesterday was our wedding anniversary, and we've been married 38 years. 38 years. And we dated 2 years before that. So I've been with my lovely lady for 40 years, actually. In actual terms, the APR value, or the terms, of like of a mortgage, the true value of it, of the interest. Well, anyway, it's more like 40 years, and it is 40 years. And we're very fortunate, and we very much still in love, and we have beautiful children and grandchildren, and they are doing wonderful. You could see them behind me in pictures in my limited view here, so you could see different things. Okay. So we have an interesting show today because we have questions. from people who are within the real estate market right now, either buying or selling, and I will share that with you as I will. Okay, let me get some more light this way. Okay, well, that's good enough. That's going to stop falling over anyway if I mess with it. And so we have a good show. It's very up to date. Well, all my shows are up to date. All right. And hopefully it will help you with your dealings with today's very hot market. Okay. So let's do our little intro. And here we go. So we have lots to talk about, and we're going to take questions from buyers and sellers in today's very competitive real estate market. It's getting better, by the way. More homes are hitting the market, so there are more homes out there, less competition, still big, okay, but not as crazy as it were maybe about 2 or 3 months ago. So things are changing. What's going to happen as well, and it's not only my prediction, but the prediction of other experts, that home prices will begin to stabilize in 2022. They're not going to be jumping up 19% or so. It's going to start leveling off. I doubt very highly that prices will go down, and no one else is seeing that. And again, unless something happens where we are not getting out of the pandemic. And there's a lot of mixed feelings about that. Some people say we are. It looks positive. The COVID numbers are going down, but we still have people getting sick. We're getting more now into the colder months when we get into flu season. So that's going to come about and then hurt the immune system of people. So everything is still hanging in balance. Looking better, but hanging in balance. All right. So if we put that aside and we continue with our straight arrow of growth, then houses will most likely level off. Now, if the pandemic gets worse, then buyers will be nervous about putting their homes on the market, because if they're still occupying the home, they don't want people walking through and who may be spreading the virus. So once we go back to that, we could have again, a small amount of homes on the market, a small amount of homes. If demand is still strong, will push our prices even higher. But if we get to a situation where more people get sick and factories begin to shut down again, and various parts of industry and the retail market and the hospitality market then it could go many different ways. So I like to keep all this in mind because it's very hard predicting the future. You go with what you know at this point, what factors are happening right now, but there may be other factors in the future that will shoot, like a star going off, exploding and going in different directions, or firework going out in different directions. So there could be one thing that knocks it, and you have all these different possibilities. All right. If we get this under control, we go straight ahead. If we don't get it under control, okay, we could either have prices going up again, as long as there's a strong demand. But again, if people are going to start being furloughed again, losing their jobs, not entering the job market, restaurants start closing down again, retail stores start closing down again, then we may have a completely different situation. All right. All right. So let's go and review some of the questions that are now going to be asked from people who are currently in the market, who either want to purchase or sell their property. And I think the first person we have to ask a question is Sanjay. Is that Sanjay?
Chris, loving the show. I am hearing this term, guaranteeing the appraisal, from new home buyers purchasing homes. What exactly does this mean? I am not sure. Thank you very much.
Okay, so guaranteeing the appraisal, what does that mean? Okay. Now, unless you're buying a home for cash, all right, you have to use a bank. So let's say you are in contract with a house, you have a ratified contract, and it's worth $300,000. The appraiser goes out there, and the appraiser is going to give his or her value of the house to the bank, and they're going to do the same thing that an agent will do when they do a comparative market analysis, or a CMA, and they're going to look at similar homes, usually within a 1 mile radius, all right, that are active, pending, and sold. They might look at expires and withdrawals, just to get like a full idea of what the market is going on. If you see a lot of withdrawals or expires, they may not have been priced properly. Okay, I tend to look at the active, but the ones that are most important are the pending and the solds. Okay, because they've had their appraisals and they've closed, and now they became a matter of record. Now, other homes in the area will use that home as a comp to decide how to price, let's say, my home that I'm going to sell. Now, the appraiser will go deeper. I mean, some of them will go in with tape measures and find out on themselves the true square footage of the house. They'll check things more for safety. They won't go in as deep as a home inspector will check everything. They'll check the appliances. They'll check the outlets, the golden crawl space. The appraiser's not going to do that. All right. They want to make sure that the house is safe for the new buyer. This is very powerful for VA and FHA, and I would say Fannie Mae loans, where you're putting down from zero, you're putting nothing down with VA loans, Fannie Mae 3% down, and FHA 3.5% down. And they want to make sure that you are safe in the house. So let's say there's about 5 steps going up to the front porch, to the entrance, but there's no handrail. They would want that handrail to be in there. So they don't want you the home buyer and the one who's paying the mortgage to fall down, and you can't go to work and you can't pay your mortgage. All right. So they're going to look at broad issues like that. They want to make sure the house has heat. Doesn't have to have air conditioning, but it has to have heat. All right. And they will look for these basic things. Again, they're not going as deep as a home inspector. All right. And we'll talk about home inspection in a few minutes. So once they've gathered all that information, they look at the comps, they're going to make a decision. And it's much more involved than this. When we go for our real estate licenses, there's so much involved with doing comparisons, all right? And I don't want to get involved with that right now. That's another, at least an hour of a live stream podcast I have to do. But what they'll do then, and now with this information, they'll see other homes in the area and what has sold, okay? And again, they might find a house that is exactly, the same square footage, plus or minus only 10%, the amount of bedrooms and baths, okay? But they might price it differently. Maybe the comp they're using, they just recently upgraded everything. They have this nice new premium vinyl floors and brand new kitchens and cabinets. And the house that you are doing the CMA for or is being sold doesn't have any upgrades within the last 10 years. So even though the square footage and the size and the bedrooms and the baths will be the same, they would then most likely price this house lower than the comps, okay? There's a lot involved with it, okay? And sometimes you can't predict what the appraiser will do and how they will guide it, I had one house that they didn't bring it up to what we thought it would be because across the street, there was like a 7-Eleven. And for some reason, this appraiser thought, people are going to be hanging out there at night sometimes. Unfortunately, they get robbed. And this kind of lowered the value of it. To me, having a convenience store or 7-Eleven nearby is actually a plus. This appraiser found it as a negative. So all these other factors come in. Now, what does this guaranteeing the appraisal mean? So let's say the contracted price is $300,000. And the appraiser says, well, I really see this $295,000. I'm going to say the house is worth $295,000. Now, if you're going with a VA loan, and that's 100% financing, the bank is only going to lend you money to the amount of the appraisal. So if the appraisal is $295,000, the contracted price is $300,000. They're just going to give you that loan for $295,000, not $300,000. Prior to this extremely competitive market, in most situations, the seller will come down. Not all the time, but in most situations, they say, all right, that's what the appraised value is. I'll calm down. But when you're guaranteeing it, you're saying, even if the appraisal comes lower, I will make up the difference. Okay? So what they have to do now, they have to bring in $5,000 to closing because they're financing $295,000. And they're bringing in the $5,000 to complete that deficit. So that's what they mean by guaranteeing the appraisal. Even if the appraisal comes lower, I will pay the contracted price. All right? Because again, in the past, when it didn't, you had the right as the buyer to renegotiate. And if you could not come to a happy mutual agreement on the contracted price, it could be one where the seller would lower the price to $295,000, or they might meet you halfway. They say, okay, I'll lower it down to $297,500, and you do the rest. So I'll lessen it by $2,500. You add $2,500. And that's fine, all right? And you could work it out that way. But if you can't get to a mutual agreement, the buyer could then be request to be released from the contract and get his or her earnest money deposit back, and then you're free and clear of it. Okay, so that's what guaranteeing the appraisal is. Now you got to be careful because, to be honest with you, I just wrote a contract today where we guaranteed the appraisal. But just to give you an example, let's say if the house was 300,000, our contractor price was 300,000, and we could say we're going to guarantee the appraisal, but as long as it's not lower than $290,000, okay? And if it's lower than that, then we have to renegotiate and come to a mutual agreement, or the buyer is released from the contract. So I put in that stipulation because you never know. It may appraise at 280, and now my buyer has to bring in an extra $20,000. So you got to be very careful with guaranteeing the appraisal. To be honest with you, I don't think you should, because you're paying for something that does not cost as much. But it's a crazy market. What's the norm is not the norm right now. But I put kind of like a safety valve there, so that if it comes out too low, we could say, hey, let's renegotiate. Okay, so that's what guaranteeing appraisal is. And the other thing is, on this house that, let's say, was 300,000, and my buyer puts in an offer at 300,000, another one comes in, and let's say at 305, which is $5,000 more. Now that looks very impressive, right? But if that other buyer does not guarantee the appraisal, it doesn't matter, right? Because if it appraises at 295 and we didn't guarantee it, now we have a pause in the proceedings. We say, okay, we got to work this out. Someone could put in an offer for $400,000, right? But if they're not guaranteeing the appraisal, it doesn't matter. So you could guarantee it, but I like what I did, and I hope it works. I put that base there so that in case if for some reason it appraises much, much lower, that we have a cutoff. I don't think this house will appraise much, much lower, but I just put a little safety valve in there for my buyer. Okay, so that's guaranteeing the appraisal. I think we have next is Jerome, and he's asking about escalation clauses.
Chris, great show. It has been very helpful for me. I hear some buyers using an escalation clause in their offers. What exactly is that, and how does it work? Thanks again.
Okay, a escalation clause. Now, because it's going back and forth so much, especially if you have a highs and best. And when does that happen? Let's say I'm seeing that happening where, let's say, a house goes on the market Tuesday or Wednesday, and they basically, when I say they, the seller and the listing agent will wait till about Sunday until it's been shown a lot, and they probably have about 5 or 6 offers, and then they might just go with the highest one and avoid doing highs and best, or they might do it and say and go to all the buyer's agents and say, let them submit their highest and best offer. Now, highest and best offer is not always the highest purchase amount. And they give it to you very simply. Let's say a house is being sold for $100,000. And you have one contract in they say, okay, I'm going to I have the contract for 100,000. I'm going to ask for, let's say, $5,000 back in closing cost assistance from the seller. So they're going to help me pay for my closing cost. Now, $5,000 is a lot, but I'm just doing it to make it very simple. So that's deal number one. Let's say, so with that deal, when we take the purchase price and minus the seller concessions, we're going to look what there is at that point. We're not dealing right now with commissions and taxes and insurance, but just that. So at this point, even though it's 100,000, they're asking for $5,000 in closing costs. So the seller at that point would have $95,000. Again, we're not minusing the commissions, anything else they have to pay out, taxes. All right. So at that point, they have 95,000. Contract is 100,000. Next one comes in, and he goes, "I'm going to offer you 98,000 on the purchase price, but I'm not asking for any closing cost." So at that point, the seller is netting 98,000. The other one, with actually the higher offering price, they're only netting 95,000. So they're actually doing better with the lower offer, but with no closing cost. So highest and best does not always mean the purchase price is at the highest point. It's what's else that's involved with there, okay, in it. And there's even more that could change it from being highest and best. A contract with no home inspection, even though it might be a little bit lower than the highest, they might go with it because we don't have to deal with repairs, okay? And once we ratify the contract, it goes right to pending. There's no contingencies on it. A home inspection is a contingency. And again, I would not recommend to anybody to not to get the home inspection. You should get the home inspection. All right. So, so with the escalation clause, you could say, when the highest offer comes in, I will then bid another 500. Let's make it easy. Let's to do the math. I'll bid another $1,000, and I will go as high. Let's say it's 110,000 on this. So the house is 100,000. Someone has put in 100,000. All of a sudden, my offer turns into $101,000. Okay, and then they have to show proof of that offer with this escalation clause. A lot of times, listening agents don't like the escalation clause because they have to keep on showing proof of the other offer, and then it's time consuming. All right, to keep on doing. Let's say it goes back and forth. Another person has an escalation clause, and then it goes back and forth like an auction. If no one else has an escalation clause, then it could be very quick. All right. So you're putting in increments. If someone matches it at your price, you're willing to go another 1,000. So 101,000. If the other person has an escalation clause, he goes, okay, I'll do 100 and 1,500. You would go above that. Okay. To the point that you put a cap on it to the point of 110. So if the person ends up going up to 111,000, well, then they won the contract. So that's an escalation clause. You got to make sure you have the cash for it. I see sometimes houses going back on the market, and in the agent remarks, which is what we see, it will say the house is back on the market, not because of the seller did anything wrong, not that there is anything wrong with the house, but the buyer couldn't get the financing. And I think what's happening is a lot of buyers are just making that higher offer, okay, but they really can't have they can't afford it. They don't have the money. Maybe they were thinking of getting it for friends as a gift, or usually it's family members, and they say, no, there's a cutoff here. We're going to give you some money, but let's not go overboard. Okay, so that's escalation clauses. All right, I think we have another question. I think we have time for one more. And this is Terry, and she wants to ask a question about home inspection.
Chris, thanks for having me on your show. I heard how important it is to not forego the home inspection. So many buyers are doing the home inspection for informational purposes only. What exactly does that mean? And again, thanks for having me.
All right, and you're welcome. Thanks for coming on my show. Okay. So instead of completely foregoing the home inspection, not having the home inspection, you can have it, and it will be only for your informational purposes. You will still have a deadline to either proceed with the contract, that you're going to say, okay, everything is good, and no repair is required. I know, and you're just actually taking off the contingency, and now you're full steam ahead to closing, and the listing goes to pending. So you're not going to bother the seller with fixing this and that, and a lot of times and I'm saying this in the positive way, a lot of times what has to be fixed is really a handyman or handywoman work, and it's really the bigger items, like when it comes to electrical. That's something a professional should do. Anything with the HVAC system, you want to get a professional with that who's qualified and licensed in that area. But, the home inspector will tell you, will give his or her impression on how bad maybe the HVAC system is, maybe how bad the roof is. And you can make that decision and say, okay, I know I'm going to have the cost to eventually, he's telling me the heat pump is going to be dead by next year, or the roof, maybe has another 1 or 2 years left before it has to be replaced. You get an idea of what's involved with buying this house. But those are the big items. There are things that maybe, the house I showed today, the door jamb was all, the paint was peeling, and it looked like it might have been water damage. A handyman would actually take out the wood and replace it. Okay, it's not a major job. Working on an HVAC system is a big job. Whether or not you're going to have to replace the roof, I mean, the seller's not going to replace the roof. They might give you a stipend, to help pay for it. But 9 out of 10 times, they're not going to repair the roof, or they're not going to give you a whole new HVAC system. You have to make the decision if you're ready to pay for that cost. But going back to informational purposes, you find out all that information, and then you say, all right, should I continue with this sale? Is it worth it? Do I have the money to fix the roof? Do I have the money to replace the heat pump in a year or so? And then you say, okay, I'll do it. And you sign off that you're asking no repairs, which basically means you're taking off the contingency and you're going now full steam for your closing. And as I tell my buyers, at this point, you just listen to your loan officer. Whatever they ask for, get to them right away. So you're not asking for any repairs with the home inspection. You're just trying to find out the condition the house is in and whether or not you want to proceed with the sale. If it's too many repairs that has to be done and you say, no, forget this, I don't want to deal with this, then you could be released from the contract. There's deadlines to this. All right. So most of the deadlines we're doing now, the home inspection period is 7 days after ratification. And that's including weekends. It's not like 7 business days. All right. Because home inspections are being done now on Saturdays and Sundays. So by that 7th day after ratification, you have to say, I'm out of the contract and I want my money back, or I'm going to proceed. And if you miss that deadline, then you can't leave the contract because of the home inspection. All right. And it's a very good point. If you still want to leave the contract, you will lose your earnest money deposit. Okay. So you got to be very aware of that time period and make sure you make that decision by then. All right. So we're on about over 35 minutes right now. I'd like to keep my podcast more around a half hour. So let's have no more questions right now. Hope that was very helpful. I hear from my my producer William Burgess that we might have a famous celebrity in the audience. Is that possible?
Chris, loving.
No, that's not him. No, I'm sorry. William, do we have a famous celebrity in the audience?
Great news! We have a celebrity in the audience. He was an American singer, musician, and actor known for his many appearances on Ed Sullivan and his recording of the song I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus. Ladies and gentlemen, little Jimmy Boyd.
Wow, that was nice seeing him again. Again, I remember seeing him on Ed Sullivan, but nice that he stopped by in our audience to sing. You know, before you know it, Christmas is going to be here. And because of COVID-19 and problems with distribution, they're saying buy your Christmas presents now, especially for your kids. You want to keep them happy, you know, start now. So we might have a very early Christmas buying season. So keep that in mind. So be nice to each other. Wear your mask if you are not vaccinated. And if you're not vaccinated, please get vaccinated, okay? And as I always say, the greatest power we have is to love, and the greatest gift, each other. And I'll see you next week.